This is a story about a business owner who doubled his revenue with one acquisition. And a lot of people grow organically. They do paid marketing, paid ads, and there's also a way to grow through acquisition by buying other businesses and rolling them up. And so he had reached out to me knowing I was a business broker. I help people buy and sell small businesses. I'll represent both the buy side and the sell side. And I had known him through a past business acquaintance, if you will. And he had reached out to me. Actually, I had reached out to him and just had asked if he has any interest in buying a business or selling his business. I knew that he had owned a trucking and logistics business up in the Midwest. And so I just jokingly had reached out, trying to leverage my contacts and my network as I was starting out as a business broker, right? So you're doing everything you can to make a name for yourself, build your pipeline, and get clients. And so that's what I was doing, right? And I was doing paid marketing, paid cold email outreach, and then I was also calling people like crazy. So he had actually gotten back to me, and he was interested in buying a business. And so one conversation led to the next, texting back and forth, had a few calls, and he had actually signed a buy-side agreement. So I retained a client, right? I retained a buy-side client, and he was looking for another trucking business to buy, and he wanted to roll up into his current one and expand his services that way. And so he was a really smart individual. He was very decisive. For anyone out there looking to buy a business, these are some really good character traits to have, to leave emotion out of a lot of the decision making and lean on the people around you, the professionals around you. Someone like myself, his attorney, his CPA, he really leaned on those individuals and left emotion out of it. And he was very decisive, right? Once he saw everything he needed to see, he made the decision. And so I attribute a lot of his traits to why he is, or why he was so successful in this transaction. So if you're looking to buy, just keep that in mind, because it's a tough process to go through. But anyways, he came to me, we sat down, and I asked him, I go, okay, what are you looking for, right? And he's looking for another trucking business, that he wanted a freight brokerage department with the business as well, looking in some pretty tight geographical areas, neighboring his state or in the same state. And, so of course what I did is I went to Biz Buy Sell and all these listing websites to see if I can find anything that fit his criteria. Now, with him being so specific in what he was looking for, 1 to 5 businesses fit his description, right? And so I inquired on them and signed the NDAs on his behalf, spoke with the listing brokers. I think there was one that was potentially a good fit, but it didn't really go anywhere. I think because the sell side broker was a little difficult to deal with, which, it's unfortunate. You come across a lot of those brokers. If you're looking to buy a business, I'm sure you've experienced this. They're just slow in their responses, and I don't know, ego and greed gets seeped into this industry quite a bit, and so it's sometimes tough to deal with some of these individuals, and unfortunately he was one of them. So that didn't go anywhere. But what we ended up doing was we started looking off market, and since we were so specific, and I think this is the differentiating factor of if you're going to go off market and if you're going to go on market, right? If you're looking to buy, you have to be very specific if you're going to go off market. Otherwise, you're just casting a wide net, and you don't really know what you're looking for, and how are you going to narrow down to a handful of industries and size and geographical range? And so the more specific you can get, the easier it is to go off market. Now, obviously telling people what you're doing and what you're looking for can be helpful. And so that was the other strategy I took. I also went off market, and I'll touch on what I did for the first off market strategy. But then I took a second approach of off market strategy, was just letting everybody know what we were looking for, right? And so I had called my contacts that I had in the trucking and logistics industry. I came from that industry, so I knew quite a few people. And so I called them all and just, jokingly, that's kind of my way of planting the seed in people's head of, hey, I'm looking for, a business, this. If you know anyone, let me know. I have referral fees. So, a little bit of an incentive and a good way to kind of seep it into someone's thought process. So that's what I did. I called a bunch of people and let them know what I was doing and what we were looking for. And then for the first strategy, I took the the good old-fashioned scraping emails. So what I did is I downloaded a software called Hunter.io, I believe, and then another one called Sales Intel. And I would go to Google Maps and I would type in trucking businesses near specific cities that he was looking for. And Google Maps pops it up and all those little red dots come up around it in that area. And I would go to each of their individual websites, open them up, scrape the email of the business owner from that website, and I would just put a list of all these business owners' emails together on a spreadsheet. One thing I will say, if you're going to take this approach and you're going to do something like this, you should be 100% sure that you are emailing the business owner, not the receptionist, not an employee or the operations manager, because that is just like almost an immediate no, because the sellers never want their employees to find out about a sale. And so if you start the introduction with an employee to introduce you to the owner, it's a bad look. So my advice to you is to make sure you're 100% sure that that's the business owner by reading their website, seeing who started the business, who's the founder, who's the CEO, who's the president, whatever. So I did that. I started scraping emails with these software tools that I had, and I sent out personalized emails. I didn't put them into a cold email batch system. I just opened up my email and I copied the email address, pasted it in there, and I kept the same email template in the subject, but I just started sending emails out to all these business owners that fit the description of what he was looking for, ballparking the size of the business that I thought it was. You can do a little bit of research there too to see what's the revenue of some businesses. Sometimes you can find some information. It's not always the most accurate, but I went ahead and emailed all these business owners, tried to start initial conversations, just getting on the phone with these people. I was able to get quite a few calls booked, letting them know I have a very motivated buyer, very serious buyer, looking to buy a business that is just like yours. You have the services he's looking for. You're in the geographical area that he's looking for, and he's ready to move now if you've ever given any thought to a potential sale of your business. And while I was doing all of that, and while I was reaching out to people who were in the industry, letting that seed kind of spread throughout the industry of the people that I knew, I had actually gotten a call from somebody that had spoken with another individual in the industry who was open to selling his business. He had a specific number that he wanted. I believe it was $4 million that he wanted as a minimum. Otherwise, he wasn't interested in selling his business. And so I said, okay, great. If you don't mind introducing me and passing the number along, we can go from there. So all the email scraping and all of the cold emails outreach, I actually had gotten it from a referral, right? So referrals are so powerful. They go a long way. But I will say the email scraping did lead to a lot of future business for me by just having those conversations and introducing myself that way. So long story short, we end up having a conversation with that individual that was referred to me, and I said, okay, I understand you want $4 million minimum, and let me see what I can do. So we got an NDA in place. I took a look at his financials, and we ran a quick broker's opinion valuation, back of the napkin valuation, and it looked like it was going to meet that threshold. So we continued on with our conversations, and we needed to get some sort of price nailed down with a LOI, with a letter of intent. And so I spoke with the buyer client, and we told him where we think we have this valued at and what the purchase price of this would be. He was comfortable with it. It made sense. It was a fair asking price on both ends. And so we went back to the potential seller and we told him that. And we said, hey, this is where we think it's at. The buyer's fine with paying that. We think this is a fair price on both sides. And he was on board with it. And so we executed an LOI and we started the due diligence process. It was an extensive process. We ended up flying up there to that state to go visit in person, tour the facility. That's something I think you should always do, always recommend. And so obviously that was a task that we were going to have to do, is go tour the office, go tour the warehouse that he had there, get to know him, meet him, spend the day with him. So that was a really good time. Buyers and sellers got along real well. Everything went really well. And so we finished off due diligence. We worked through the financing, which was a little bit of a headache just because the first bank that we worked with, they wanted to use the buyer's house as collateral for the loan. Now, if anyone's familiar with SBA loans, a lot of the times they're going to ask for collateral, whether it's equity in your house or any other assets that you own. They're going to ask for that, and he didn't want to put anything personal of his up for collateral. So we had reached out to more of a local lender and told him the situation. We had all the information so we could submit it over to him really quick. And he was telling us to put a HELOC on the house. That way he couldn't ask for collateral on the personal home. And so we did it. And it was just one of those gray areas that you can kind of squeeze through, which happens more often than you think, right? If you can find more of an aggressive lender, more of an entrepreneurial spirited lender, that's how you can get some of these deals done, and that's what it takes sometimes, right? So, because the first bank was like a major bank that was, if you don't fit these 3 boxes, sorry, we can't help you. So we went to the smaller lender, we got it done, and we got the loan pushed through. He closed the deal, and something I didn't even mention here throughout the whole thing is he was doing, the buyer client was doing, I think around 8-9 million in revenue, maybe a little bit more. He probably was up near the 10 to 12, honestly, in revenue, if I recall. And then he acquired a business that was doing about 8 to 9 million in revenue. So he about doubled his revenue with one acquisition. Pretty much same for bottom line earnings, minus the debt payments that he had now has to satisfy. So he about doubled revenue, doubled bottom line earnings with one acquisition. And he's crushing it. And the way the structure was put in place was, I believe, a 10% seller note. The remainder of it was financed with an SBA loan. And then the seller remained on board to work full time, right? Because he liked his job. He loved what he did, but he didn't like doing the books. He didn't like doing insurance type of things, the paperwork nitty gritty. He just wanted to be on the phones and sell and talk to these truck drivers and to sales reps and to customers, and he was very good at it, right? Very good at it. And so what the buyer ended up doing, which has worked out perfectly because they were in different states, neighboring states, but in different states, and so the buyer kept him on board as a full-time operator of that location that he owned, and then the buyer just oversaw all operations at both locations, obviously. The seller remained on board, ran the show, they built a great relationship, and it really just meshed perfectly. And so it's just an example of when you know what you're looking for and you can get specific, you can go after specific businesses, right? You can target specific businesses. And then from there, it's figuring out the synergies of the two individuals. And what is the goal of the seller? He wanted a minimum of $4 million, was open to staying there and working. He had no intention of leaving. He was a fairly younger guy. And the buyer wanted to expand geographically. He wanted to add to his bottom line earnings, but then he was going to need assistance operating the new business if it wasn't within an hour radius of where his current business was. And so it checked the boxes of expansion, doubling his revenue, but the operations wasn't checked. And so that was a conversation that they had to have and say, hey, I'm going to pay you a salary on top of obviously the cash out that you're going to get from the acquisition. But I'm going to need you to stay and operate this business. And so they worked out benefits and PTO, which was a weird thing for him to have to go through. I remember him saying that, and so, and that's just the human aspect of this. I think a lot of people think these deals are very transactional and numbers driven, and they are, but it's a people business, right? You're doing business with other people, and so to make it work, you have to make it work for them also. And this buyer client was exceptionally well at doing that, exceptionally well at meeting these other individuals' needs, his employees' needs, and his personal needs. And he did that while he simultaneously won himself. And so that's how you create a good deal. It's not about gouging for a price. It's not about gouging for certain terms. It's about creating a situation where what are your needs that would create a win, and what are the seller's needs that would create a win, or vice versa, the buyers and you being the seller. And how can you merge those two, right? And so each party got exactly what they wanted, and it worked out perfectly, and they're continuing to crush it this day. So that was one of my favorite deals to be part of. A lot of fun, a lot of work that went into that one because it was all off market. Was fortunate to bring the buyer from off market and the seller from off market and pair them together. So that was a fun deal. and hopefully going to be part of more. But yeah, that was the trucking and logistics deal. So if you have any questions on it, if you have any questions about buying a business or selling a business, let me know below in the comments. I'd be happy to answer them. But I appreciate you watching.